Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of 55 and 5 here on YouTube and adfreeshows.com. It's Ian Riccaboni. It's Cary Silkin. Cary, we are trudging along. It's Friday, and I have an exciting one for you. We talked about a real thespian who had different fields. This man had a number of different names. That's your hint.
Well, we've had a good week of cards. Interesting people, some that we knew a lot about, and some we learned a lot about. But let's wind up the week with a bang.
Yeah, and this one will be a bang. So to catch you up, if you haven't watched before, Cary and I have 5 minutes to talk about each wrestler in the 1955 Parkhurst set. We're going one by one through the set, chosen at random order. Cary knows a lot about wrestling. I know a little bit. In case we get stuck or stumped, I got the safety net here to read some information. This one, Cary, your hint, our last wrestler did a lot of things. This wrestler had a lot of different names. One in particular you might know if I tell you. So I'm going to put this wrestler here on top of Uncle Gunny and Captain Lou. Cary, the name on the card says Roberto Pico, but what can you tell me about Pancho Villa?
Not much.
Okay, that's fair.
Not much. Boy, we were on a roll all week.
Yeah.
And should I know Pancho Villa?
It's a name Bruce Pritchard brings up in terms of one of the guys he saw that it's kind of a joke they have where he was just kind of, I always got the impression he brings him up because he was hanging around and kind of one of the veteran guys, and you just kind of saw
if I had to jog my memory or just make a guess, I would think maybe this guy ended his career as a jobber in the South.
You're on the money. His last big feud was in 1979 against the mighty Igor, who inspired in large part Ivan Putski.
All right. Well, why don't you fill us in with some real info?
Yeah. Do you know what year he debuted?
Well, it's a 55 card, and he looks like a mature gentleman here.
Right.
So I'm going to guess 1940.
1931.
Really?
Yes. Do you know who is the first documented match that's available on the internet says he wrestled? Well,
is it a name like Jim Londas or something?
No. Young Bob. So who must have been a sellout. Young Bob.
Not to be confused with Young Morgan. You know who that is?
No.
My father used to say to me, like, if I was like, "Oh, Dad, give me $10. I want to get the new double disc Electric Ladyland album," and he would say, "What do you think you are, Young Morgan?" Well, that meant like, from the J.P. Morgan.
Oh,
like I'm J.P. Morgan's kid. So Young Bob.
Young Bob, and there's not much about Robert Pico. He went under a number of names, including Bobby Lane at one point. Bobby Lane, he had a match at the Garden. It looks like so. So from 31 to 49, he's Pancho Villa. He becomes Roberto Pico in 52, becomes Bobby Lane at some point in 50. He's switching between Bobby Lane and Roberto Pico, mostly an opening match guy. His biggest notoriety, he teams with a guy named Gene Dubuque, and they form a tag team, and that seems to be their highlight.
Where is that?
San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems to be the kind of the peak. He feuds with the original Rip Rogers, which I'm finding out that there's an original Rip Rogers in 1957. Which, do you know who the original Rip Rogers was?
No.
Eddie Graham.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. We've now had the original Tom Zink, the original Nikolai Volkov, now the original Rip Rogers. Goes to the Southwest and the Southeast, Alabama, Mississippi. So he's not maybe a guy that would get a lot of magazine coverage. One of the most interesting things I found is he's a pioneer in intergender wrestling.
Really?
Yeah. And so the first intergender wrestling match that I've ever seen, 1960, and he's in it.
And what state was that in?
That was in Laurel, Mississippi. Do you know which rock and roll star is from Laurel, Mississippi? He's more of a folk guy, but he's a big rock hit. One of my absolute favorites.
Hold on. Well, I don't want to have too much dead air here, but Steve Forbert.
Yeah, Steve Forbert, Laurel, Mississippi. And then, he turns back into Robert Pico. Roberto Pico fluctuates between Robert and Roberto Pico in 66. Unless he's in the Gulf Coast, then he's Pancho Villa again. So he's got a number of different aliases. Down in the Gulf Coast, must be a good hand. He's wrestling the Briscoes, Jack and Jerry. He's wrestling.
So this guy had like a 40-year career?
Almost 50.
50 years.
Yeah. And so by the time he's wrestling Mighty Igor in 79, he's been wrestling for 48 years.
And where was that? Because I associate Igor with Detroit area.
Yeah. I think that was Gulf Coast.
Okay.
But I mean, it was blink and you'll miss it. It was just a handful of matches. So he's a guy that his name lives on because of a Bruce Pritchard joke that I can't quite make heads or tails of. And he's a guy that's featured quite a bit in a number of different areas, never toward the top of the card, but he's got a nice satin vest.
Beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful satin jacket here and a nice veteran that had a nice long career.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom, wrestling for 50 years. So if you even started at 16,
right,
you're ending at 66.
Incredible.
Am I doing math?
Yeah.
Right? 76. Yeah.
Yeah.
66.
And now I do want to issue the caution that it's entirely possible that with these results, it could be a different Robert Pico or Roberto Pico that all got kind of merged together. But from all I can tell, this man had a near 48-year career. And the card, I mean, it's for certain that the Roberto Pico on the card is the same one that faced Igor. And he looks about 40 there. So add 20 years and there
he must have been one of these guys like Frank Hickey, or they were around so long, and they were decent guys that they would always be able to just get a job. I'm just guessing here.
Right. Who was the enhancement guy in the early 80s WWF? And he was kind of a name in the 60s. Kevin Sullivan had the brief tangle with him in the 70s.
Oh,
we'll know it as soon as we stop filming. We'll pick it up. But guys like that get a little bit of a run and then just are able to.
Right. They have a good word with the promoters. The guy's trustworthy,
reliable.
Right. Maybe he's the guy you could send to the spot show to make sure the money gets back. So, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, Roberto Pico, near 50-year career, if our research is correct. And if it's not, please tell us. Let us know in the comments. Let Cary and I know on Twitter, at ROHCary, at Ian Riccaboni. Please check out our producer, AJ, at Bisson Creative, for all your web design needs. And for another episode, join us again Monday. If you're watching on YouTube, Monday, 8 p.m., every weekday at 8 p.m., where we're back with another 55 and 5. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for listening on adfreeshows.com.